Yeah, we ought to be live any second now. Come on in, everybody. We see you out there. Come on in. It's Friday morning where I am. It's not even mid-morning where Russ and Glenn are.
Friday morning here too.
And Charles has been awake since about 3.
Yes, so. I've already had a kielbasa.
There we go. It's time for Comics by Night, folks. For the 4th of November. Every time I look at the date anymore, it just, it shouldn't be that late in the year, should it? But I guess it is.
2023 coming up.
No.
We have a disclaimer that Nita wants us, HR wants us to run now in front of all of the shows. It runs exactly like this.
The views and opinions expressed within the video content found on the Indie Comics Network are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Indie Comics Network or its sponsors.
And then we follow that.
I'd like to add to that the things coming out of my mouth do not necessarily represent my own positions.
Yeah. Disavow.
There we go. Here's the opening, folks.
What was that? This is not a charade. We need total concentration. Now, once again, this time, with the...
How dare you?
Can't nobody tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing.
There we go, folks.
I think we've set the tone.
That's exactly right. Come on in.
Just call this program "Get Off My Lawn."
Well, I don't know. Are we really that way? Yeah, we probably are.
You probably, yeah.
Old guys.
Old farts talking the biz. Here we are. Come on in, everybody. I'm your host, Randy Zimmerman. I've been printing alternative and independent comics.
I remember when comics were a nickel.
Long time. I don't remember that. But I know they used to be. There used to be nickel comics out there by Fawcett with Bullet Man on it. Yeah. Before that, they were 10 cents. And then 12 and 15. I remember when they were 15 cents as a kid. Roadrunner. It's one of the first comics I actually bought. So, and then we just watched everything jack up from there. Yeah. I've been doing this for a long time, done just about everything in comics that you can imagine. Some maybe you can't, but now I love podcasting, love talking about it here on the Indie Comics Network. And this is Comics by Night, where we talk about the nuts and bolts of doing the business. And today we're going to talk about building IPs and whether it's worth your time to make your own property and promote it yourself, or if you should be chasing after that bone from the big dogs and trying to draw Spider-Man and other major icons that aren't yours and become a cog in the great machine. So
don't bother. That webbing is tough to draw.
Yeah. Just crazy. I saw a great 2-pager autobiography once, and must have been in a Spider-Man manual, or annual, I should say, not manual, but that Ditko drew. Yeah. That he goes through and talks about his entire process of doing it. He's got the page done that he realizes he hasn't drawn any of the webbing in. It's like, damn it! Now I have to go back and put the webbing in.
And Jack Kirby, the Great One, just could never get Spider-Man right.
No.
No.
Or Batman.
I think the only time he professionally did Batman was late in his career in the Superpowers miniseries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Spider-Man he did in that crossover, that Fantastic Four that had Thor and Daredevil in it. That looked great, and I'm not quite sure why.
I think that was John Romita going over that.
I think so, yeah.
Plus, didn't he redraw the cover for Amazing Fantasy 15?
Yes.
Because they showed Ditko had drawn one, and it wasn't from the angle that they wanted, so they had Jack redraw it
into
the classic iconic cover that we all know and love.
Yeah.
Where he's got the burglar under his arm.
Right,
So-
and he's revealing his secret identity.
Burglar.
Yeah, he can't. The burglar's freaked out at the time. He couldn't hear what he was saying.
Well, he dropped him right after that. So
Well, that too.
he never told anybody. Dead men tell no tales.
Exactly.
Dead burglars.
With great power comes great whoops. Sorry.
What joke
Damn
below?
it, man. Damn it, man. You stole hamburgers. You're going down.
As the Three Stooges said, we always get it right the second time.
Well, it was it when the original cover. He's got one under each arm, and he said that he's calling the police commissioner. He says, "Commissioner, I've got these two. Oh, I've got this one burglar from that bank robbery last week."
I don't know what I couldn't tell you what happened. Suddenly, somebody just dropped out of the sky.
Thought he was Superman.
Somebody was swinging away, maniacally laughing. David Letterman, one of our talk shows here in the old days, used to drop stuff off of tall buildings just to see how they hit. So might have been some sort of fascination with that.
Back when he was funny.
I think he dropped collective political madness off the side of a building to see if it'd break. It shattered and covered the whole of America. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
We
got the side shrapnel.
None of us are fooled. We all know what happened, but that's why we're in the shape that we're in. There was a guy that came back in time to try to correct the first Trump election and didn't succeed. And he said that if Trump didn't, he was back there to assassinate Trump, and if it didn't happen, the whole world was going to go to shit. And guess what happened? He didn't succeed.
There you go.
But,
I still,
because of course,
they all thought he was nuts and put him in the asylum.
Yeah,
But
the world ended in 2012, like the Mayans said, and we're all in just a fever dream since then. That's it.
But
we're
don't
all
forget,
in the Matrix. Yeah.
Don't forget, before Trump got in or Boris got in, it was really great, wasn't it?
The one.
Yeah. It was just so fantastic.
It's just so fantastic. We've got
all the decisions that everybody made was so good.
Both of those guys don't make me not regret so much not having a ton of hair. If that's what hair's got to look like.
We've got a guy over here who's got this. He's an MP and he's got this blonde wig. What's the name of that guy? Do you know, Glenn? He's very posh, as most MPs are, and
I thought all of your what do you call them, solicitors over there wear white wigs in court.
No, it's a blonde wig, and it comes down across his face like it's some kind of 90s grunge haircut, and he looks ridiculous every time he comes on. He's just like, "What do you look like?"
Does it look more
hysterical?
Does it look more ridiculous than that weather guy who plays his drums?
Weather guy?
I've seen him. The weather guy, the strange person who plays drums and he does the weather.
Well, while he's playing the drums?
We've
got some thunder coming in from.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's mad.
Now, both of you guys are in the same country. How is it possible you've not heard of this?
Not necessarily the same
because two reasons. One reason is that I don't watch mainstream television at all, and the other one is that if we do, it's local TV. So.
Oh, okay. Now, I should mention here, because it's apropos, that I first was introduced to British broadcasting through Monty Python. Okay, so when I eventually saw the real thing, I couldn't stop laughing because I'd only seen them do the imitation of it, which I realized when I saw the real thing was so spot on that I could not take it seriously.
Did you see Spitting Image with all that?
No.
Puppets? You ever see that? Oh, you've got to watch that. Spitting Image. That is. They used to do that live right after the news, and there'd be stories in the news, and they'd already have a script for it in the show, and there were big puppets, big caricature puppets, and they used to have the hands.
Oh yes, I have seen that. Yes,
the president's brain is missing.
Yeah.
I would play a clip, but I know for sure that they listened to even the smallest podcasts and slapped you with a copyright.
They had
that has happened before with that program.
The Spitting Image crew I think they had a full-length film, and they had Dustin Hoffman breaking into Ronald Reagan's White House, and he had a Ronald Reagan head on, and he was walking up the corridor. And what was Ronnie's wife called?
Nancy.
Nancy was coming the other way, and you see Nancy get out of bed with Ronnie in the bed, and she comes down the corridor, and then Ronnie's walking towards her, and it's Dustin Hoffman. He's got a mask on, and he takes the mask off, and his nose is like, oh. And she says, "Oh, hello, Ronnie." He goes, "Oh, hello there, I know." And she just left him in bed, and she's going down the. I don't know where she's going, but
hey, Nancy, that's a great nurse.
So
Michael Palin on Monty Python used to do that kind of urgent, breathless, BBC newsreader, just with that sense of urgency. Yeah. And I thought he was being ridiculous, and then I saw the real thing. I was like, wait a minute, that's exactly what they were doing.
What's that guy, Russ? What's that guy called who rants all the time for about 5? What's he called?
On what?
Let me get there. On YouTube. And
you have an Alex Jones over there?
No. It's funny. It's not serious like Apple or Alex.
Oh, who said Alex Jones was serious?
Well,
he thinks
finding out he should have been.
Yeah. And you're making the frogs gay.
Yeah. So I can't remember his name. I'll find it for you anyway. It's really funny. He just goes crazy about the politics. Just goes mad.
Oh right. We've got quite a few of those on YouTube now. So
anymore.
But yeah, I mean, it's bizarre to think that Monty Python is actually calmer than real life now. So there you go.
Arthur Two Sheds Jackson.
Yes. Or Harold Althwaite, the most boring man in the world. Who wrote the joke? No, the other guy wrote the joke, didn't they? Wrote the joke that killed all the Nazis.
Yeah.
Deployed it in the war.
Joke?
Yeah, no, nobody can remember the joke because if you
remember the
read
joke.
the joke, you die.
Yeah,
everybody hear it.
My dog has no nose. Then how does he smell?
Yeah,
awful.
Yeah. I was watching a guy last night, an Australian comedian called Jim Jeffries. Have you seen him?
Sounds
familiar. Check out Jim Jeffries. He's so funny. He's like Ricky Gervais type of thing. It's just and Carlin, really, really cutting stuff.
Yeah, well, there was a man, Carlin.
Well, we're going to introduce ourselves before we go off the air.
I did. Glenn's here. Glenn, introduce yourself.
I'm Glenn Fleming. I'm a writer, artist, and publisher. I do loads of things. I worked 40 years in graphics, like a couple of the guys on here. Spent a lot of time wasting doing that. But now I write books, and this is relevant to this show. This is a book I published earlier this year about my visits to Jack Kirby's house in 1988 and 1991. You can get this from me, and you also get a DVD of it with me talking to Jack. I also publish Comics Unlimited, which is a 100-page quarterly magazine about comics. And I'm just about to launch my second book of my character Hatch. And that should be coming soon.
Cool.
Soon.
Also with us today is Russ Leach. Russ, introduce yourself.
I'm cold, I'm tired, and I'm frightened. Where are my slippers?
There we go. Also with us today is Charles. No, go ahead.
My name's Russ Leach. I'm a comic book artist from the UK. I draw stuff like I've been on Batman and Doctor Who and it's Marvel and stuff.
You've drawn Batman.
I am drawing Batman.
There you go.
So
he keeps throwing that in our faces.
If you were there, you'd throw it in everybo's face.
Like, I don't know.
Absolutely.
This could be a limited time offer. I don't know how long this is going on. I've been very fortunate. I only started in comics properly. I only started drawing in anger since 2010, and I've had a very fortunate run in my comic book career. So I'm doing stuff like that now, and I have my own book as well. We're talking about right now. IP later, and Death Can Save Us, and you can find out about me at russleach.com.
Also with us is Charles. Charles, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I used to tell people on these podcast streams that I was the oldest person here, but I think Glenn and I might be neck and neck. I think Glenn and I were born in the same year, so we've been around the same amount of time. If you haven't guessed, my character is Rammer. He's in back of me. He's on my head, and he's right here. That's the first issue. The second issue was going to come out any second, I promise. Third issue is almost done. I'm writing the fourth issue. And we are talking to a distributor in the United States.
I didn't mean to do that.
About getting distribution in the comic book stores in the United States. And so there's a possibility that will happen. In the meantime, you can get that on Amazon.
Cool. So our topic today is building IPs, if it's worth it. Because on one of the previous broadcasts that we did, I think it was the Sunday Funnies, somebody wrote in and asked what was better, to work and become part of a large corporation drawing their icons, or to develop your own IP.
All I can do is talk from experience and say both.
I'm going to say, why not work on both?
Do both. Don't feel like you have to be one or the other. But don't feel like you've not succeeded if only one of them comes along.
Yeah,
there you go. Life takes you in funny turns.
You could either keep the regular money and hope yours works, or if it does, you could leave and leave whoever your employer was and do your own stuff.
My work for hire for other people, the money I make from that gets shoveled into Rammer. So I'm doing both, and it's they feed each other.
Yeah. All my outside clients are commercial art clients. I never the editors that I liked and respected were never there for long enough.
Well, you tell Marvel where to go, right?
Well, I got offered an apprenticeship back in '85, and I laughed at how much it paid. Yeah. Not even thinking. I was going through a divorce at the time, so my emotions were pretty frayed as it was. But when they told me it was $9,000 and I could just move to New York and find a roommate, I just laughed at them.
Now, what year was that?
85.
85.
Right at the end of 85.
So, 9,000 in 85 was
still ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have to say I got less than that for starting in my first job, and it wasn't in comics. If only, God, if only it were. That was working for a small design print shop. So I got straight out of college.
But you didn't have to move to New York to do it.
No, I didn't. But I was on the outskirts of London. So, obviously New York has always been a little bit more expensive. But yeah, it's tough when you're younger. I mean, that's totally, bled into my career path, because I submitted to Marvel in around, I think it was around somewhere between 94 and 96. I can't remember exactly when, because I know they went for Chapter 11 in, when was that? Was that 95? They went for that?
Right around in there, yeah.
And I was in talks with them, with their new talent manager, up until that point. And they already said, yeah, you're great. We like what you're doing. We'll start passing you around the editors. I got the same response from Image Comics as well, although DC and Dark Horse were not responsive. I think Dark Horse sent me a letter back, but DC didn't even send me a letter back.
Dark Horse at that point was going through a hard time as well.
Yeah. So I'd kind of got on the list, as it were, and it was like, oh wow, and nothing came of it. And I ended up going off and having to pay for more, just like you're saying there, Randy. You've got a life to lead.
Yeah.
So you have to make decisions. So I just went off and carried on down the career path of design, ended up as an art director, went into marketing, advertising, ended up in code as well, all kinds of places. And I've been fortunate to have that career, and got to a point where I decided, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to have another go, naively. And I did have a go, and actually changed my living situation to do it. I sold up my old house and got a smaller house, got rid of my mortgage so that I could take risks. And those are the kind of risks I couldn't have taken when I was younger.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It really is a tough business. Publishing in general is a tough business. Following your dreams is tough. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that people need to get into their heads. We've got an X Factor generation, and people need to appreciate, and this ties into creating your own IP as well. You have to tailor it. You have to tailor your situation, and you have to take on work at the same time. You can't just think, that's it, I'm going to go out and create my own IP and I'll be fine. No, you've got to fund it. Okay. And it doesn't matter whether you're funding it by being in a creative environment, I was fortunate to be an art director and do what I did, and then that effectively funded part of my later career. Or if you're writing your own IP, and it doesn't matter where that money comes from, if it's another creative job or if it's just working in a shop, it doesn't matter. You're funding your final goal, and you have to keep your eye on the goal. You have to be there. You have to commit to the bit. Okay. And if you don't, it's never going to happen.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to tailor that to yourself. You have to be prepared to duck and dive and maneuver yourself and do things that you maybe didn't want to do in order to get to that final position. It's not all just going to turn up. There are very few people that turn up at Marvel's door, DC's door, or whatever, big publisher's door, whatever it might be, writing or art, and just get taken on. It rarely happens. There is a few people, and it rarely happens.
It doesn't happen anymore.
No,
because they're on a "don't call us, we'll call you" basis.
Exactly. So you've got to go out there, getting yourself known, the only way to do that now is to kind of go and make your own IP and go and create your own world and show that you've got the commitment to keep going.
Right.
You're keeping at it, and then eventually that will get seen. And if it doesn't get seen, but you're doing well at it, then you're going to get the success that you're aiming for anyway. So it's a tricky balance, but the one thing that you have to have in mind is your goal, and that doesn't need to be an end place. It just needs to be things that you want to have going on. So if you want to be drawing pages on a regular basis, if you want to be writing books or creating IP on a regular basis, that's your goal. Okay, yeah. That's where you're going, and 9 times out of 10 it will take you somewhere else afterwards. Okay, but you've got to keep that goal in mind, and if you have to go and drive a bus or work in a shop in order to do that, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
Don't expect it all at once, because it ain't going to happen.
At the time that you were talking to Marvel, they were so desperate during that bankruptcy period that they actually sent letters out to all their freelancers, and I got one saying, we paid you too much money for the work you did 10 years ago, so this is what you owe us.
Oh,
they actually sent this.
No.
Yes. This was, in my case, this was for work I had done for them 7 or 8 years earlier. And I was astonished, and I found out a lot of people got these letters, and some people actually sent them money.
No.
Suddenly I realized why you like Greta so much.
How dare you?
I told them where to go. I said, you want this money? Come after me.
Come find me.
This was here's the page rate you offered me. Here's the work I submitted to you, which you approved of and paid me the agreed upon page rate.
Right.
And now you're telling me, oh, that was more than we wanted to pay you back then. So can you send us some money now? No. This is how desperate they were at that period in the mid 90s.
This was years before they were bought out by Disney. Something Disney.
I thought you were going to say that they asked you to take a cut in your rate, not give them money back.
Well, I hadn't done work for them in 5 or 6 years at that point, and I'm getting this letter out of the blue, and this was reported on at the time in Comics Journal. It's kind of a forgotten, embarrassing chapter in Marvel's history.
Of which one of many, by the way.
I'm going to say, is that the only one?
It's funny how events shape you. I was just that little bit too young to jump on the UK bandwagon. Okay, so where 2000 AD was getting big, I was just that little bit too young to be part of that scene. That's if they'd have accepted me, of course. But to drive towards that, it was difficult. So by the time I was really getting into it in my early 20s, where I was thinking, right, okay, maybe I could get a go. This was when I started talking to Marvel. Things were kind of on their way. Do you know what? Events had been set in motion. We'd already had the exodus of artists and writers from the UK over to America. Big superstars had been created. Things were happening, So I was too young to be involved in any of that scene whatsoever, however peripheral I might have been. So when it came to speaking to Marvel directly and getting some success there, and then it not happening was actually the best thing that happened to me.
Yeah,
because I didn't get heavily involved in, a lot of artists suffered after the 90s.
Yeah.
A lot of people, had to go elsewhere and do it. And not every artist that did a mainstay book for Marvel in the 90s, after the 90s collapse, then automatically got storyboarding work for movies.
Right.
Okay, that ain't the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
There were lots of people that were just set loose. They didn't know where to go, and they went back into, illustration and marketing and all the rest of it. And
or
of course, by
domestic employment in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, in that time, in that end of the 90s period, as we moved forward, illustrators were becoming fewer and fewer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't as many, back in the day when we're talking about the people like Zimmerman and Nita and what have you, that had marketing illustration as part of what they did as a living. That's what happened. People used to have pictures illustrated for adverts. Well, that all started to stop completely. Mm-hmm. Even that wasn't as big an option for people, for artists, professional artists. So in some ways I feel lucky almost that I missed out on that. Okay, I don't have the street cred or the professional longevity that some of my peers have, people who are the same age as me, who managed to do it and be a success. But at the same time, I got myself a decent career, okay, and I'm now drawing. Okay, I have not actually drawn for editorial in mainstream Marvel or Disney comics in the States. But I have drawn professionally strips for, Ben 10, Doctor Who, multiple Doctor Who's, okay, Batman. All right, I couldn't really ask for much more, and so that wouldn't have necessarily. When I was talking about the end point, that would never have been what I'd have thought of me doing.
Right.
That wouldn't have been the thing that I'd have thought I'd have ended up doing. Obviously, on top of that, my own book as well. Again, I'd never have thought of that. Yeah, but actually, it's a really great place to be, and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. So you've got to duck and dive. You've got to be able to maneuver yourself through the process, but keep your eye on the ball. Because I always, even while I said, right, okay, I'm going back to marketing and design and what have you, there was always this, right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go do this at some point. I'm going to make this happen. And I got the opportunity and went for it. But I never thought it would happen in the way that it did. And quite additionally to that, I found that I matured in such a way that it helped my artwork. I don't think I was ready for it back in the 90s, whereas I found myself ready when I came back to it, 12 years ago now.
Well, when I was a kid, I was always writing and drawing and everything. When one of my things is that I wrote my first book when I was 9, and it was 20 pages long, right? And it was about Stingray, Jerry Anderson's Stingray. Yeah. So I've always written and drawn things. But when I was 15, I left school, and we're talking about salaries before. I got £6 a week. £6. I was 15. I was £6 a week, and I wanted to be a printer and go into the printing trade. So I went into this little print shop in Manchester, the main city near me, £6 a week. And then I thought, no, I don't want to do this. So I went to art college when I was 17 and was there for 2 years. And then 3 years after I left art college, I was studio manager of a 7-man art studio. So and then I started drawing, do illustration in there and all photography and all that kind of stuff, and writing text and doing typography and all that. So I obviously came back to my path, So what, like Russ was saying there, you'll find it. You'll find where you're going. If you live long enough, you'll find it.
Keep your eyes open. You're available for the opportunity.
Exactly.
That's going to be there.
I've said that before with myself. I've had done a lot of things, but I've only taken opportunities, and a lot of people miss the opportunity.
Yes.
And complain. They're too busy looking at what I'm doing and what you're doing. Why can't I do that? Well, you don't want to do what I do. You want to do what you do, but you've got to know what you want to do and take your opportunity, because those opportunities are there.
I found that when the Coof came along, I'd been on a year's path with stuff that had kind of almost veered away a little bit from the core comic book stuff that I'd been doing, and it was very it was profitable. It was good pay because it was in the tech sector.
Mm-hmm.
It was still comic book. It was still sequential art related, but it was very different to just straight up comic books. And all that fell off a cliff. Also, I was doing storyboarding for film, and it all fell off a cliff when the Coof turned up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already had my 9 pages done for my graphic novel for Only Death Can Save Us. I'd already done the preview, and I was ready to start slowly putting it together. So it could have been, if I'd have carried on at the same pace, it would have been years before my first book came out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it happened. It happened that way. I took the opportunity. Okay, I put the book together. I had a reasonably successful Indiegogo, leading to a second Indiegogo now that unfortunately delayed, is still there and will be there in the new year. And it got me to a point where actually a publisher came asking for me if I'd like to publish the book. So you never know.
No.
You never know where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And what you've got to do is you've got to be ready to work really, really hard.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. Yeah. You've got to be ready to work your backside off.
I hate the cliche word journey, but I like the word path. People have to find your own path. I told my children that when they were young enough to benefit from it. I said everybody has to find their own path. You can look at other people and say, boy, that would be really cool to do something like that, but the way you're going to get where you're going is going to be very different from anybody else. Yeah. I think in trying to create your own intellectual property, your characters, your ideas, I think the mistake that people can make early on is that when they start thinking about it, they look at the things they like out there, and what they see is the complexity of it and not the simplicity of it. Mm-hmm. And they don't realize that the things that have caught on not because they're complicated and complex, but because they're simple enough for people to grasp the concept immediately. And once you've grabbed them, then you can draw them into your world and you can flesh out that world and build that world. But it's the point of the spear, it's the tip of the pyramid, that simplicity that's going to draw them in. I was at the New York Comic-Con, and they had a networking event that I went to that was very interesting. It was kind of like a speed dating. They were trying to hook people up with other creators. And I talked to a guy who was a wannabe screenwriter. He had done some films, and he needed some guidance on an idea that he had. And I try not to roll my eyes when people come up to me and talk like that. But I figured, okay, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Go ahead, hit me. What's your idea? Well, it took him about 12 seconds to tell me what the idea was. And it was one of the cleverest things I ever heard. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, if you can tell me your idea in 12 seconds, and it's that clever and that simple and actually pretty unique, I thought that's great. And I told him so. And I said, yeah, go with it. And if you want to throw a script in front of me and have me critique it, I'd be happy to do so. But simplicity is incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to come up with something that has the veneer of originality. Nothing is original, but you have to have the appearance of originality, and it's got to be simple enough that a civilian, a non-comic book person, can grasp the idea in a few seconds. Yeah. And that all sounds really simple to do, but try it and see if you can come up with something that is original and simple and that a civilian can grasp the concept in 12 seconds.
I think a perfect example of that would be something like Star Wars. I mean, you look at all the back story to Star Wars, all the extra canon that they've created over the years, but that original film was just the good guys and the bad guys. It was a fairy tale. It was basically a Grimm's fairy tale, wasn't it?
Shouldn't it have been called New Gods, though? Is that another discussion?
but it was
it was going to be Flash Gordon.
Exactly, it was straightforward storytelling, wasn't it? It was straightforward storytelling, and all the rest of it simply flourished out of the back end of it.
But if you go into the history of Star Wars, though, that was a tough sell at every step and every angle. He had a heck of a time getting anything done, because everybody looked at him when he told him what he wanted to do and said, "No, that's it. That'll never sell. You're crazy." What do you think?
Even though he had a hit movie.
He just came off of a big movie.
And they also told him, once the movie had been accepted, they said, "Well, we're going to need to change the name, because no movie is going to attract an audience with the word war in it."
Yeah.
Because we were still reeling from Vietnam at that point. It was only a few years later. And so obviously the marketing people, they don't really know what they're talking about. The poster, I'm looking at the poster a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That was the poster.
Yeah.
If you read Lucas's book from the mid-'80s, I think it's called Skywalking.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about that, and he says that, and as we know now, well, people knew if they read the book, Star Wars is actually he presented it to the studio as nine films.
Three trilogies.
And part 4 was what was it? Part 4, isn't it? The first one, the very first one. You know how it works. But he talks about that distribution thing where he couldn't get arrested when he took his scripts in, and he said that and they gave him everything he wanted, because they didn't think it was going to do anything. If you understand what I mean. So if he made he said, "I want distribution," and they said, "Yeah, whatever you want." When it went through the roof like it did, and when he came to do Empire, they were saying, "Oh, well, that distribution thing was only for that one film," and they were trying to get out of it. And apparently, he kept the distribution. I think it was I can't remember what it was distributed through, but they only
20th Century Fox.
Right, they only made. If I remember rightly, 20th Century Fox only made $78 million on Empire, because of distribution.
Yeah,
and that wasn't obviously the big money.
Mm-hmm.
The distribution isn't the big money; it's the sales of it in the theaters and all that palaver.
Well, Lucas went through and sacrificed everything financially, pretty much his directorial money and everything for to keep the rights for the merchandising. Everybody thought he was crazy.
Yeah,
and even after the success of Star Wars, he had trouble getting Raiders of the Lost Ark made.
Yeah,
and now
nobody wanted to make that movie.
No, it's amazing, really. And now a lot of movies are made, and you just think, how did they get a green light?
Exactly right.
You just think, oh, they're awful.
Yeah,
but I mean, listening to Sylvester Stallone, two completely different people. Listening to Sylvester Stallone talk about how he hawked around Rocky, is very inspiring. Sylvester Stallone is an inspiring character. I really like him.
He's a lot more intelligent than he comes off in the movies. That's on purpose.
Is he not? Is it dyslexic? I don't know.
I think so. Yeah.
He has some issues. He may even
learning disorder.
Slightly. I don't know. It's a learning disorder, but he might be deaf in one ear as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But he's written so much stuff. I mean, one of my favorite films is Paradise Alley, which is kind of like a forerunner to Rocky.
Yeah,
superb film. It's utterly superb and incredibly funny.
Is that the one where they're running across the rooftops at the beginning to get that?
No, I don't know. I can't remember that bit in it. He's got a massive brother who he puts in the boxing ring. And it's a wonderful tale. And Rocky, I love Rocky as well. And the whole point being is that I didn't realize that just at the time. It took me years to work to find out about it. But he himself had hawked it around. His dream was, no, I'm going to act that, and I'm not giving this away without me acting it as well.
And directing it.
and direct, and he did the whole thing,
and writing it,
and they made a bundle out of it. They got loads of films. It doesn't matter what they ended up being. Okay, the first film was fantastic and classic, and he has made his career. He made his environment.
Wasn't Stallone in other kinds of films before all that?
I don't think he was.
Well, yeah, he had to pay. He had to pay his bills just like everybody else. Yeah,
But I mean other kinds of films.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, there was a film circulating called The Italian Stallion.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
But the point being is he made.
You had to do what you had to do in order to get your bills covered.
He created it. He created his own world. He made that happen. Okay, he's a superstar of his own making. All right, he had a goal, and he saw it, and he went for it, and he worked damn hard for it.
Yeah.
Okay. And he took a risk as well. Sometimes you have to take a risk.
You see all the research, all the sweat equity that he put in that Rocky script, because that Rocky script is incredibly simplistic. It follows an age-old Hollywood formula of a story structure and everything about the underdog succeeding or almost succeeding with this film. That's what made it so interesting, is that he almost got there, but he still succeeded.
Win. Sorry,
he still won, even if he didn't win. But what I was going to say is the structure in that film is so classic and at the same time so simplistic that film schools tear that and use that as one of the prime examples of a proper Hollywood script.
Yeah, I'll bet he had to fight with the studio to
every step of the way.
To keep the ending. I'm sure the studio wanted him to win.
Probably,
and he probably said no. That's non-negotiable.
That's why he did Rocky too.
Yeah, talk about elevator pitches. Here's an elevator pitch for a movie. You tell me what the movie is. Okay, it's a famous movie. Transported to a surreal landscape, a young girl kills the first person she meets and then teams up with 3 strangers to kill again.
Oh, we all know what that is.
Well, that's The Wizard of Oz.
Yes,
it is.
One of the worst films ever made, alongside
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings.
that was a soiled franchise because of all the musical numbers, but it's classic. Nobody dares to touch it.
I thought they were remaking it.
Those flying monkeys still scare the hell out of me.
They had a couple of close calls, but Disney went through and actually tried to adapt a mutation of a couple of the books with Fairuza Balk as Dorothy, called Return to Oz.
I saw that one. That was a strange movie.
And you see, if you go and read the books, that's the books.
Yeah, I know. It was a very bizarre movie.
Are very off kilter, but incredible pieces of literature. Just fantastic.
Like
and there's so many points in the book, beats and incidents that they just, for the MGM movie, they just swept aside for the musical numbers that they could perform on a soundstage.
Gotta love a fairy godmother. She was a looker.
Linda, the Witch of the North.
I've only seen it once. I will never spend any time on it again.
Well, I tell everybody, if you want to read an incredibly interesting book, the sequel
Get off
to
my
that,
lawn.
Yeah. Baum, when he wrote the book was intensely popular, and Baum started to go off in any other direction that he possibly could. He wrote all sorts of different kid stories, but he kept getting mail about Wizard of Oz.
Because he wanted to distance himself from it, that's why.
He did. No, he did, because he figured that story was told and he needed to go on. Yeah. Well, his wife knew Susan B. Anthony really close during the abolitionist movement, women's rights campaign. And if you go through and read his second book, because they asked him to write a second book, so he said, okay, but if I do, it's going to be my book and it's going to run like this. The main villain in the second book, the 2 main villains, is an old female witch and a beautiful woman named Ginger, who decides to unionize pretty much all of the women in Oz to go against the male domination. And it's a very fascinating book. The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodsman are the only 2 characters that are in the second book that were in the first one. And there's all these other new crazy characters that run through it. And the main character is a little boy named Tip. And by the end of that book, There's some, and this is when John R. Neal came in and was illustrating these beautiful illustrations. They had a character that was 2 couches tied together with an animal head stuck at the front of it and a broom at the back of it with palm trees stuck in the side of it that they sprinkled with magic dust and turned into a flying creature for them to. I mean, the imagination level on the second book is so incredible. It's just unreal. But at the same time,
has that ever been adapted straight?
Not to the screen. They used some of the bits in Return to Oz. The Gump character, the character of the couch and all that was used in Disney's Return to Oz. The Jack Pumpkinhead is in the second book. One of the greatest characters I thought in there was a character that at a schoolhouse they found a projector, like an overhead projector, where they could take things and blow them up large up on the screen. So the teacher takes a little bug crawling across the floor. It's called a woggle bug. Sticks it on the projector and it projects up to the screen, and it's so frightening that there's a girl. Everybody's marveling at this invention. This girl standing in the window is so frightened she falls out the window, and everybody goes running outside. Luckily, they were on the first story. Everybody goes running outside to see if the girl's okay. So the bug ends up climbing off of the screen, and life size. I mean, full size, and he becomes like Mr. H or TM. HM Wogglebug TE because he was in the schoolhouse. He's thoroughly educated. So it's
now I know why I can't get my stuff on screen.
The highly magnified Wogglebug thoroughly educated is what it was. And he ends up getting a suit and becoming a main character in a lot of the other books. But it's just crazy to sit and read. And the whole thing really is a metaphor about women's rights.
Yeah. Well, in the chat, I've got an ally with C. Michael there. He agrees with me about Wizard of Oz.
C says, morning, everyone. Agreed on Wizard of Oz. Glenn, this is the movie where John Ritter plays L. Frank. That was pretty good. Yeah, it's his life is really interesting because a lot of these adventure writers, like Edgar Rice Burroughs, was the same way. They were incredibly failed businessmen who had businesses over and over and over again that they just couldn't. They were entrepreneurial, had an entrepreneurial spirit, but they couldn't get a business off the ground to save their life. But they told great stories, and they were great salesmen. So they end up sitting down and writing these stories out, and that's why John Carter and Tarzan came out, and Baum ended up doing Oz.
John Carter. I tell you what, I really liked that film. It bombed.
I thought it was really very good.
Yeah, I thought it was really good too. Baum may have tried to separate himself at first, but he leaned into it, even making a movie called The Patchwork Girl of Oz. There's even a Marvelous Land of Oz movie featuring the Wogglebug, old though. Back in the silent era. Yeah, he was bored with what he was doing. He had a lot of money, so he started dealing in silent pictures. So it's a film play, and stage plays that they'd go around like vaudeville. But the books are fascinating, and the closest the books have ever gotten is that Return to Oz movie that nobody has seen. And that's such a mishmash of the second and third book that it's sad, really, because they should have just straight up adapted it.
Edgar Rice Burroughs was in his mid to late 30s when he started writing.
But he had gone out and
wrote Tarzan, and think about how old that was back then.
Yeah, he had gone out and done a ton of stuff, though. He had lived a very adventurous life, so a lot of that stuff was pulled out of his experiences.
Experience is everything. That's why I mentioned earlier how much more mature I felt. Not just I was old. How much more mature I'd felt coming back to the work, 12 years ago, rather than when I was originally working at it, in the mid 90s. Yeah. And it really made a difference to what I was putting down on the page, and even to the fact that I felt that I could actually write a story rather than just, draw other people's pages. And I think that makes a difference. I mean, Jack Kirby, I know he'd done loads of other stuff, but wasn't the first issue of Fantastic Four when he was 44 or something.
I think he was closer to 50, wasn't he?
No, he was mid 40s, whatever. But the fact is, that was late on. Okay?
Not just that, but 10 years after that, he's doing the Fourth World stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I can see like in a sort of a similar age range. Okay, I'm not going to publicly state that on the internet because we all know that's not a good idea. But in a similar age range, I can see that and obviously I'm not comparing myself to Jack Kirby. Let's get that straight. But the fact that I had some of that life experience to aid me in what I was doing, you know, like I felt like I could do something, and that experience had shaped me to the point where it was actually serving my creative abilities. That's not to say that it's like that for everyone. Like I say, there are plenty of people that just come straight out of college and they're genius, you know. Yeah. But the vast majority of us have to work our way through and find our paths, as Charles was saying. So yeah, it made a difference, but also, you know, going back into making your own IPs and making your own brands and what have you, never give up. You never know when it's going to happen. Do you know what I mean? We have a guy. We had a guy over here. Can't remember his name. I think his name was Richard something. What was the Glenn, the guy from Only When I Laugh? Is that no the one with the tortoise at the front of the show? It's about the old Scottish guy.
Well, that narrows it down.
I don't believe it.
One Foot in the Grave.
One Foot in the Grave. That's it. Only When I Laugh. One Foot in the Grave. Okay.
Same
and
thing.
that came on. What was that? End of the 90s or something like that.
I'd say that was early 90s.
And wasn't he 60 or something when he got his first acting?
Was he called somebody Wilson?
Yeah,
he might Richard Wilson.
Richard Wilson. I think that's right. And he got his first acting gig.
Yeah.
On a mainstream TV on a series that must have run about 5 or 6 series.
Yeah.
5 or 6 seasons. And it may be even more. And he's a household. He's still a household expression. They don't believe it.
Yeah.
You slip your head into slip your foot into a dead hedgehog as a slipper. It's like this stuff was classic, and he was, you know, very late on in his life,
in his career. Yeah.
In comparison to the way young people start in acting, you know, and he had a great career after that. So you never know when it's going to happen.
And you don't know, you don't know what's going to catch on. Nope. If you're sitting there trying to create your own IP and you're thinking, I don't know if anybody's going to be interested in this. It's more important that you're interested in it, because if it comes from the heart and you're interested in it and you're invested in it emotionally, then that's transmitted and other people are going to see it. But if you're just looking at what's out there and you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to imitate things that are commercially successful, and your heart's not in it, I think that shows as well.
I think
I'm going to write the next Netflix deal.
Exactly. Yes. People pursue the wrong thing. I think they pursue the fame and the glory and the money.
Often,
and they don't. Yeah. They should put that effort and that focus and that thought into producing something that will get them famous and money, hopefully. Do you understand what I mean? You can't think. You can say. I mean, a lot of people do probably. You can say, "I'm going to write the next best novel." You know, best-selling novel of all time, like Stan Lee always said he wanted to do.
The great American novel. Yeah.
And he didn't even write one.
Yeah.
Well, I've written 5.
Yeah.
I'm not saying any good, but why didn't he keep at it?
Yeah, I think we're all different as well.
He didn't write one, but he scripted thousands.
Well, that wasn't his. I'm using his point. He wanted to write the great American novel,
right?
And the Fantastic Four isn't the great American novel.
No, you never know where it's going to go. You never know where it's going to go. That's the point. Is you never know how that's going to end up, the final shape or the final form.
Right.
And, and the other thing is, to your point of Glenn, to your point of actually doing something. There's a lot of, and again, this is I'm not striking an opinion on this. I'm just saying this as fact. There are people out there, there are creators out there that do well, okay, with YouTube channels. Okay, right. That's how they garner an audience. Okay, they do what they do. Okay, and it's not for everyone. If you can pick out a few creators who do really well on YouTube, that's a tiny minuscule percentage of creators that are actually creating. Okay, good on them. Well done. A lot of this is revolving around the new technologies, new media, and all the rest of it, and how we crowdfund books as well, how books can get to the general public, to the readership. And this is all good. Okay, it's all good, right? But not all of us are designed for that. Not all of us work in that way. I have my own YouTube channel. Okay, I got quite a few videos on there. I haven't actually been active on the channel for quite some time because I have been working. Okay, and that's not to say that those people that have audiences aren't working when they're on their YouTube channel. But for me, the YouTube channel doesn't give me enough of what I want out of what I'm doing out of my path. Okay. And I feel that getting on and doing the work is more important than doing my YouTube channel. I still put videos up. I still have a presence. I come on things like this and I talk, and I want to be transparent to the potential audience that's out there and show them, you know, that I'm here to create stories and to communicate with them, and that readers and fans are the most important thing, because that's what the communication of the story is all about. Okay. But at the same time, I'm not that guy or that girl that can go and create a channel and go, look at me, I'm funny all the time, or I'm you know, awful all the time, whatever it might be that your view is, and I garner a huge following. That's not me. That isn't me, and it's never going to be me. So what I'm focusing on is just getting the work done.
Yeah, exactly.
And nailing it and getting on with it.
Speaking of YouTube, they just sent me my own personal URL for my channel. So I came through the email. I thought it was pretty neat. You know, instead of having all those /x952 dot all that, it's just a little shop.
Yeah, you can go youtube.com comic book black belt. You can go find my channel there.
I think since we're an hour into this, maybe we can get into some nutsy boltsy stuff, because I threw a couple.
What
of
nutsy?
links.
We're nutsy bolts in it right now.
I threw a couple of links at Randy, and a couple of things that interest me are character design and how a silhouette, if you can tell your character, if it's distinct in the silhouette. If you can look at the silhouette,
so that's what Vince Coletta must have been doing then. Sorry, carry on.
Then you got something. You look at the silhouette of Popeye. You look at the silhouette of Mickey Mouse. You look
Galactus.
at the silhouette of Galactus, Batman. You know who they are in silhouette, so that's good character design. The other thing I wanted to talk about is trademark and copyright, and I'm wondering if anybody here has filed trademarks on anything.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's a pretty expensive and complicated process.
Is it? Sorry. Are you saying it is, or are you?
It is. It is.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and it can be done. It can be done without a lawyer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're fine. What we have on the screen now is a lot of great Alex Toth designs.
Yeah.
That he did for animation, keeping it simple.
I had an amazing trademark experience when I was trademarking the name Rammer. I submitted it, and everything was going great. I did it myself, and then they wanted proof that it was being used in commerce, because you can't trademark something with the idea that you're going to use it in commerce. It has to be currently being used. So I sent them links to show them that it was being used in commerce. And for some reason, they kept rejecting that. So I got a lawyer involved, and he said, well, send them a JPEG of the cover of the first issue and the second issue. They're going to want to see two. And I said, well, the second issue isn't out. He said, doesn't matter, dummy up a cover and send it to him. I said, can you do this for me? He said, yeah, just send me the JPEGs of the first issue and the dummy of the second issue, which doesn't even exist yet. It was immediately accepted. And he told me a story about some architects who had submitted a photograph of a building they designed to trademark this design of this building, and it was rejected. And he said the reason it was rejected was it didn't have the name of the building, the name of their design on the building itself, like a plaque. So he said, do this. He said, take a cardboard box, and on the bottom of it, like a shoebox, on the bottom of it, draw your building and put a plaque on it. And take a picture of the shoebox that shows the design of your building with the plaque. And they sent in a photograph of a shoebox, and that was accepted by the trademark office of the United States. So you can do it on your own, but lawyers definitely know tricks that you would never suspect. You'd never suspect in a million years that something would work like that. And I'd never suspect in a million years that showing them my book on Amazon wouldn't be enough to show proof of commerce.
Right.
But showing them a JPEG that could be completely phony would pass muster.
There's a few icons.
Yeah, now obviously not a silhouette, but you show Popeye in a silhouette, and you know what the character is.
It's little Abner up top there. Al Cap, classic.
If your character is so generic that in silhouette it looks just like any other guy or gal, then maybe it's not a good design.
Yeah.
And coming up with a design that's original, distinct, and simple is not easy.
No. Lots of nice stuff over there. I should put this up in the chat. Making comics with Salgoon. Is that Salgoon Saru? Salgoon Sam. On character and design.
Salgoon Sam.
It sounds like a
yeah. If you look at Toth's model sheets for the animation he did, they're
incredible.
absolutely amazing. I saw some originals of those at the New York Comic-Con, and the dealer wanted, I think, an average of about $350, which I thought was actually pretty reasonable for original Toth.
That must have been a long time ago.
No, this was this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, you sure they were
Did you buy
originals?
I didn't. I told him, I said, I just don't have it in my budget today, but those are very fair prices. But I bet he'd been trying to hawk them for a long time. But they weren't pages. They were model sheets. So
model sheets, he did a lot of model sheets here for a couple of different animators, primarily Hanna-Barbera. These are out of his sketchbook, I believe. These scenes here. Toth, though, is a master of stripping everything down to just bare essentials because he did animation for so long. And he did a lot of character design work. If you've watched any of the superhero material that Hanna-Barbera did, it's probably his work.
Yeah, he did some work for DC, too.
A lot of work
for their animation.
Did a lot of work for Warren. Did a lot of comic book work. Did a lot of illustration work. He was one of those guys that went everywhere and did as much as he could in a lot of different places. But here are those silhouettes. There we
go. Yeah.
Red Flintstone.
I've seen this on Facebook before. Yeah.
Mr. Krabs.
Look at how distinctive they all are.
I like money.
Yeah, there's Stewie.
Is that Bullwinkle third line down?
Yes.
Yeah. Even look how simple Stewie's design is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there.
He's reminded
Yogi
me of
and Popeye. Yeah.
He's reminded me of your character.
He's a football.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a little hatch in him.
Yeah.
Ren and Stimpy there between Fred and Bart.
Yeah.
There's SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Imagination.
And the
now these are obviously these are very cartoony, but if you look at the best designs of superheroes, they also will be very distinctive in their silhouettes.
Betty Boop.
Look at that top right, Mighty Mouse.
Yeah. Yep.
You almost fill that in your head just off of the silhouette.
Yeah. I think Hatch would look pretty good on there. I think you'd be able to see him.
Like Stewie there next to
a
Pinky in the Brain, only with a little bit of hair.
Is that not Calvin and Hobbes?
I'm sure they're in there.
Ruby.
No.
On the bottom line. You say that's Stewie.
Here, you mean?
No, further next to the right.
Right
that
there?
One. No, left. That one. Is it? Did you call him? Did you say that's? I don't know, Stewie.
That's Stewie. It's a cartoon character that Howie Mandel created
Right, okay.
and drew up.
Right, it just reminded me of Calvin and Hobbes, little guy.
This here is the dog. The dog is Peabody, and that's his boy Sherman.
That's right. Yeah.
Peabody and Sherman.
That's got feet, so it can't be Casper.
Here, that's Casper. Here
is that
exploding.
Casper? Oh right, okay. There's Betty Boop.
Yeah,
isn't that one of the kids from the Kids Next Door or something?
Right there, yeah. Yep, that's from one of the Cartoon Network shows.
Is Taz there and
Bluto?
What's Pinky and the Brain?
Pinky and the Brain. Marvin the Martian.
Today we're going to take over the
right
world.
Below, Pink Panther, exactly. Yeah. Go Go Mojo, Go Go, right there.
Ah, Mojo Jojo.
Snoopy.
That's Dexter's lab, next to between Snoopy and the SpongeBob character, next to Goofy.
Isn't that the dog from the cat thing,
Odie.
Garfield?
Yep, that's Odie.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've got my own. I've got my own if you want to share it.
It's what Charles wanted to point out is these cartoon characters are so distinctive. You should be able to recognize them off their silhouette. Yeah.
Mine isn't as good as that. And this isn't the best example. But the point being is that the costume is very simple.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, but you're not seeing this. If you were seeing this straight on, it would be more. The silhouette would be more distinctive. But you're showing him at an angle, which is actually hiding some of his distinction.
Yeah. So like for instance, the hooks on his feet, his scythe, and the spikes on his shoulder pad.
Yeah, they would be much more distinct than a straight on.
Yeah,
they would jump out. Okay, the idea being is I wanted to keep the costumes pretty straightforward. It's easy in a world like we live in with Star Trek and Star Wars and all the rest of it to do some kind of hyper tech, you know, like lots of detail and everything. But that, exactly like Charles is saying, is you wouldn't be able to differentiate that from one science fiction character to another.
Right.
Interesting that Kirby's in silhouette there.
Yes.
And Kirby.
Yes.
But what's really jumping out from Kirby? What's really jumping is his pipe.
His pipe, yeah.
It's either a pipe or a cigar.
It's the big contrast.
And you can see that. And so that's what I was saying about what I was doing with the character development there, is the spikes on the shoulder pad and the hooks on the feet are little cues for you to see that this is a certain character. Like I say, this is a little bit more complex, far harder to do than what they were doing, and nowhere near as clear as what we were just looking at. But still, the intent is there. And exactly like Charles was saying earlier, as far as actually creating your brand is concerned, or your IP, keep it simple. Mm-hmm. Keep it as simple as you can. From the
I have another criteria for world building and for thinking about and creating characters that's a little bit unusual, and I've never heard anybody else say this, but I would want to know where the character lives. Where does the character live? Some characters, it seems like they don't live anywhere. Where do they sleep at night? I need to know that. I don't need to see it. I need to know it.
You need to know they exist off camera. As it were.
Exactly. And that's something that's very important. That's why Peter Parker was so real. He lived in Forest Hills, and he lived in a house with his aunt. And we saw the house. And we saw the street. We saw his bedroom. We saw him jump out the bedroom window to go swing into New York City and deal with the bad guys. So it was very real. And this was something that when they first created the character, the Vision for the Avengers, who I thought was a really cool character, I thought, well, wait a minute. Iron Man has his life and the other characters have their lives, but this character is not human, and yet he sort of is. So where does he live? Does he have a bedroom in a Stark mansion, or does he just go stand in the corner and shut himself off at night? This was something that was a little troubling to me, and I wondered about the Vision. Like, what does he do? Where does he hang out?
He has a pub
next to a plug, probably.
Next to a plug.
When he does, he goes and stands next to 15 other versions of him that we see next week.
He has a charging point in Sainsbury's car park.
He does.
We even got to see where Judge Dredd lives. We got to see
he
his
had an
apartment. We got to see his.
Yeah, but that was wrong, wasn't it? That
his
was
his robot. Well, I liked him sitting around his apartment with his helmet on. I thought that was fantastic.
Well,
Was it
that was what
Walter the robot?
One thing I didn't like about Stallone was when he was so worried about we wouldn't know who he was when he had the helmet on. The first thing he did was take it off and ruin 15 years of continuity.
Right, and he never put it back on in that movie. And I knew
You
that
see,
was coming.
Back then, superhero comic book creations on the screen weren't that great. Let's face it.
That wasn't Stewie. That was Bobby from Bobby's World. My mistake.
And
Thanks,
to be honest, I have a soft part for a soft place in my heart for that film. Okay, simply I think it's probably just because I like Sylvester Stallone, right? And I don't get quite as uptight about the display of those ideas in films, because films have to get if those films were aimed at the people that read the comics only, I would absolutely be they've got to be absolutely correct, but they're not. They're aimed at the general public, and the general public will go and see all kinds of.
When I make Till Only Death Can Save Us into a Hollywood blockbuster, I'm going to change that guy's blade so that it's a rifle.
Fine, as long as I'm paid, I don't give a shit.
Well, you should.
No, can we all agree that Russ is wrong about this?
Yes.
The point being is that when you do stuff on film for a mass audience. Yeah, I'm not going to play the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd film as a perfect
sold out,
example
hasn't
of
he,
this.
Charles? He's sold out
as a perfect example of this, because it isn't. Okay, I'm very shallow. I like big explosions and special effects. Okay, so that's the way it works for me. So I'm not quite as I don't care so much. As far as I'm concerned, the MCU is a version of these superheroes, but it isn't it isn't Marvel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but a few months ago, you and I agreed that we would cast them in the 60s.
Yeah. Yes, I would. I would, but that doesn't mean that what we're saying is wrong or right. What I'm saying is I can accept that those representations are not the things that I love. They may well be good and I may well enjoy them, and there may well be some little boy inside me, especially when you're watching something like Civil War, where you see them all going at each other, that you go, oh, God, this is great. But that's just one special effects fight scene, okay? It's like, these things are made for the general public. They're not made for us as fans. And whether we like it or not, the general public aren't necessarily going to accept the way that they should. I agree with you. Yeah, they should be, but they're just not going to.
The general public don't know, so they wouldn't know that it had been changed. So why not just give them the original?
Don't get me
wrong. That's a great bell. I agree with you.
Randy,
what I'm saying is,
come on.
The other thing is
what I'm saying is that I don't find it. Because I love the source material,
come on, Rush. You know you're wrong. Just admit you're wrong.
I'm just happy to go bury myself in the source material.
Which Judge Dredd movie was better?
Oh God, the most recent one. Of course it was.
And did he take his mask off? Did he take his helmet off? No.
I don't need an American to lecture me about Judge Dredd. Okay.
But Carl Urban came into that property knowing he wasn't going to take that mask off.
I think what it comes
the role, he was ecstatic to have it.
I think what it just comes down to is I'm just more of a whore than you guys are. That's all there is to it.
Well, I think we can all agree on that.
You can't. I think the Stallone movie really proved you can't go through and change some of these icons so radically. Granted, it was Stallone doing Judge Dredd, but they should have just done Demolition Man 2 at that point.
Exactly. That's what they should have. In all fairness, that is what they should have done. Demolition Man was fantastic.
Are we all in agreement that Judge Dredd should have been Arnie?
Well,
because he's got the chin, hasn't he?
He's got the chin.
I thought Carl Urban was amazing.
That chin under that.
Really good.
Under that.
You know what?
I was really hoping we'd get to see Rutger Hauer as Rogue Trooper.
Yeah, that would really be good. But he was getting a bit old, wasn't he?
Really close. Well, this was back in the 80s.
Yeah. To go back to what you were saying about really hitting like actually getting the comic book on screen, Carl Urban's chin was fantastic.
Well, I have to say,
it should have gotten its own Oscar.
Carl. Yeah.
I haven't seen the film.
Have you not?
I didn't see the new one. No.
It's quite violent. It's quite sort of dark. But then I suppose that's in essence
Judge Dredd's
what
dark
Judge
and
Dredd is
violent.
dark. But there's something about comic strips, and there's something about the way that it was produced in 2D. I mean, we've had these conversations ad infinitum about the way that they were produced back in the late 70s. It was fun, but at the same time, it was extremely scary stuff. When you think, because you're so naive as a kid, you're just like, I love fascist Judge Dredd. He's great.
I would love to have been a fly on the wall with a story consultation between Pat Mills and Alan Grant and is it John Wagner? Could you imagine that? Those three in a room together, they would have been amazing. Discussing Judge Dredd and all that stuff.
Brilliant.
Now, I always thought Dredd was amazing because it was a great story and a statement at the same time about the American judicial system. Just so
Americans don't know that the Judge Dredd name came from a musician.
It was a Jamaican fella.
Yeah, it was a reggae. Jamaican. Well, wasn't he British? I thought he was British, but he was doing reggae. He was doing reggae, and his name was Judge Dredd, and it was many years before the comic.
Because of his dreadlocks.
Dread, awesome. Truly dread.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
sweet.
And he had very, very naughty lyrics, if I remember correctly.
It's amazing where we pull our inspiration from. Just crazy. But Mills, I mean, and we've said this before, you go back and you read those early 2000 AD progs, there's not a bad story in there.
No.
I mean, you run across some of them that are schlockier than others, but it's still just
if you go before that, when he was doing the girls comics, there were some quite dark undertones. Have you seen those, Russ, those girls comics? That Pat Mills was doing this.
Russ hadn't even seen Phantom Stranger before. I said,
no,
romance
comics. Although when you said that he'd appeared later on in DC in Justice League, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of.
It's in the.
Oh no, I said it was in Swamp Thing.
It was in the Swamp Thing annual. Yeah.
I did remember
it from Swamp Thing a couple times during the Alan Moore run. Yeah,
but I'd completely sort of I didn't know of him as an individual character.
No. Oh yeah.
Okay, here's Judge Dredd, the musician. He was born in Kent.
Yeah.
Alexander Minto Hughes, better known as Judge Dredd. He was the first white recording artist to have a reggae hit in Jamaica, and the BBC has banned more of his songs than those of any other recording artist.
There you go.
That's why I thought he was from Jamaica, because of that Jamaican connection. Obviously, being very young, that's what I'd heard. Right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, the BBC banning stuff normally ends up in it being number one anyway.
Yeah.
I think they gave up banning it.
That's what usually happens when they try to ban something. It just gets more popular.
Well, they did
Frankie says, "Buy me."
Yeah. We did that with Relax, didn't they? When the band Nite was top for about 16 weeks or something.
Yeah, 16 weeks, and they couldn't play it on top of the bar.
And then their next single went straight in at number one, as did their next one as well. So
and they that was Two Tribes, wasn't it? And it had
Ronnie Reagan and
Yeltsin, Ronnie Reagan, or something like that,
fighting in
a big pit.
Yeah,
and so they ended up banning the video as well.
Yeah,
we only know Relax over here. Yeah. That's all
they had.
Ever saw.
They had the government nuclear war warning going over the top of it.
Yeah, we saw Two Tribes. We saw Two Tribes here, and the video, which was great with the puppetry.
Oh, they didn't. Did they have any puppets?
I thought that was
Land of Confusion by
Land
Genesis.
of Confusion. Yeah, that used the puppets we were talking about earlier. From that company.
I don't know. I mean, they might have been some puppets in Two Tribes. It's been a long time since I've seen that video.
I don't remember seeing it.
I may be
look it up on YouTube, I guess.
I may be jumbling and confusing my memories, but I do remember puppetry with I think with Reagan.
Yeah, that was Land of Confusion. That was a Genesis song. Yeah,
I put Two Tribes on my film when I flew into the Grand Canyon in a helicopter. And it got banned on YouTube after about 3 minutes. And they gave me 6 options: either take it down or put one of these on. And one of them was something like that guy's guitar on, the Deer Hunter, that type of music. Now you can imagine playing Plinky Plonky as a helicopter zooming into the Grand Canyon.
Hey,
it doesn't work.
You just mentioned the Deer Hunter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have a huge problem with this movie.
Go on.
Huge problem.
Now now the conversation's really wandering. I'm just want to point
so,
that out.
What day is it?
So how long had Christopher Walken been playing Russian roulette in Vietnam when is it De Niro who comes back for him?
His luck was incredible.
10 years?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it was 10 years.
No, it wasn't that long.
It was years.
4 or 5 maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
There's no way your luck runs that long.
So you're playing Russian. You play Russian roulette once a week.
Yeah.
You're probably dead in a month.
The thing that got me about that, it wasn't that got me. It was the fact that De Niro was able to go back to Vietnam.
Oh yeah,
he wasn't in the army then. He just went back there.
Just like drop in. Yeah, just drop in.
Smuggled his way in. Yeah.
Good film though. Good film.
That and when I believe I was in high school when that film came out, that was the first film I remember walking out of visibly shaken.
Yeah.
Do you remember the parody on?
Wow, what a great film though.
There was a parody on Second City with Bob and Doug McKenzie. Our British cousins probably aren't familiar with Second City and Bob and Doug McKenzie, the beer hunter.
McKenzie brothers,
what they would do is they'd have a 6-pack of beer.
How's it going, eh?
They had a 6-pack of beer and they would shake one of them up, and then they would open each one near their head. And one of them was loaded with shaken up beer. The beer hunter.
I do remember being shaken a little when that Russian roulette part was happening. Though, it really was a moving thing.
It was just a
and we used to have
incredibly done cinema.
What was that guy called, Russ, who used to do the film review?
Oh God, he's dead.
Nearly had Siskel and Ebert.
Yeah, this guy used to have a film review show, and he showed that, and he said
film and the year number, wouldn't it? Film 79 or whatever.
That's right. Yeah. And Barry Norman was it?
Barry Norman, yeah.
And he showed that bit about the Russian roulette. It didn't show the ending of it; just showed that bit, and he commentated and he said, "This is historically incorrect. How could anybody know that type of thing didn't happen anywhere at any particular time? Certainly in a war."
I think Barry lost his love of imagination. I
think he lost his wig, didn't he?
Well, I think that's something else that people get hung up on because we go back to the subject.
It was the movies; it didn't have to be correct.
Of creating your own environment, your own space, your own IP, your own story, and all the rest of it.
Thanks for trying to swing us back around, Russ. Appreciate it.
Great segue there. As much as we were talking about not being too heavy on the background too quickly. It's a simple story, getting the simplicity of it to people first. In that same way, you don't want to be thinking about bigger things like where else can this go? What brand can this be? How big can this get? And listening to what we were talking about, what struck me about what we were talking about the Deer Hunter is there was no Deer Hunter 2 as far as I remember. It was a critically acclaimed film that did really well at the cinema. Back then, people wrote stories. They wrote a story and it got made and people enjoyed the story and nobody expected it to be
I'd hate to think where they were even going to take that.
No, do you know what I mean? Nobody expected a trilogy just because the first film was great. Okay, so it's okay if you want to make a one-off. If your thing is I'm going to make loads of stories and they don't have to be connected and each one is going to be their own world, each one is going to be their own story encapsulated, much the way a lot of novel writers work. Okay, that's okay as well. Not everything has to be Lord of the Rings or Star Wars.
I'm going to say except Tolkien.
Except Tolkien, yeah. Not everything has to be Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Trek. You don't have
famous
to make.
Five.
Yeah, you don't have the famous 5. Drink ginger beer. It doesn't have to be this mass of connected story.
Well, they have to squeeze everything out of it, don't they? That's what they do now.
Exactly. So don't follow that big Hollywood line.
Their lack of creativity too.
Yeah, that's what Ricky Gervais said at those awards a couple of years ago, wasn't it? When he said they're just jokes. Let's have a laugh. These are just jokes. we're all going to be dead soon, and there's no sequel.
Well, when
he said, you know.
the screenwriter William Goldman said that amongst his film friends back in the 70s, I guess it was, he said when box office returns became news, which wasn't always the case.
Right.
Before the 70s, nobody knew what movies made. The general public didn't know what movies made. And he said when he and his friends are sitting around, they see these box office returns being broadcast on the news that night. He said, "We're finished."
Yeah.
Well, he said, "We're finished. We're never ever going to be able to sell something again just on the quality of the script and the idea."
You're definitely
there was a comment.
Yeah.
There was a comment recently by somebody who said, who was asking what it was all about, because X Factor had been on the news.
Yeah, why is that on the news? Why is X Factor on any news?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. It's entertainment. It's not my news.
Right.
Okay, when entertainment news becomes part of your news program, okay, there's something desperately wrong. Okay, but then when the coup happened, there were no more terrorist events. So you've really got to question the news, full stop, haven't you, as to what they're actually telling you and what they want you to know. So, and I'm not going off into a deeper.
And it was even going on long before the goof popped up.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is I use that as an example.
Right.
Of suddenly one thing that was in the news is no longer in the news. And is that because there were no other terrible events happening? No, it's just because they were focused on this thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what happens. And focusing on one aspect of, say, movie making, it's like, okay, it's the box office receipts. It's like, well, that first off, that's not news. Okay, I don't care. All right, surely it's about the art. I know it's a business and they have to make money. That's fine, but that's all about green lighting and revenue and all the rest of it. It's
that's
not about
their business.
It's like when
business.
It's like when DC they had I think it was Batman versus Superman, and it only made 750 million. So it's a flop. Okay, it's like, what? Sorry, excuse me. That's a good day at the office. What are you talking about? That's it might not have been critically acclaimed as the best Batman versus Superman movie ever or whatever. Again, shallow me. I quite liked it. I thought it was okay. It had a great Batman scene in it. It probably had the best on-screen representation of Batman ever in that one scene where he came in through the window and beat all the bad guys up. Okay, but that was an action scene. Okay, so that's not taking into account the whole sort of detective aspect of Batman. As far as
I thought you were going to bring up the scene where he looks at Superman and goes, "Your mom was named Martha."
No, we're not talking about that. But like I say, I'm shallow Al, and I, as far as films are concerned, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was okay. It's a film, for Christ's sake. What like back the truck up, enjoy it. But the point being, it's like 750 million, and that was the headline on it.
Yeah,
that's the headline. It's like, well, surely that's okay. And because of that, they kind of went into freefall with the movies, and things just went all over the place. And there's this $1 billion sort of ceiling. It's like, if you don't make $1 billion with a movie, it's obviously not a success. It's like, whoa, no, that's not the way it works. So it's not just about the revenue in that one particular film. We can talk about comics and books as well. If you're actually going for something that's going to be a multiple book or a multiple film thing, you want to engage with the audience and make them want more of it. So you've got to think a bit more long term than just like, how much has that one thing made? And it's bizarre to me that I suppose it goes along the same lines as we've spoken about before about green lighting comic books. It's like the bigger companies are not whether it makes profits, it's how much profit it's going to make. Whereas the rest of us are like, can I make a small profit out of this? If I can, great, I can live, and I can, live my dream at the same time. And that's where comics have gone a little bit off kilter, because it's not about making comics, it's about making profits, or the comics are literally just put in a backwater of a much, much, much larger company. And so the focus isn't on the comic book itself. So that whole aspect of finance, of money, it seems to be so overblown in the artistic stroke storytelling world. It's a great shame, because it stifles creativity. it stifles that, that originality of just coming up with something new. That's why we get so many reboots and second, third, fourth movies of things.
Have we all done crowdfunding here? I think we all have. Yeah. And what determines success in crowdfunding when you've created your IP, you've created your property, your characters, your world, and you put it out there. And I think the success is it's really determined by where you've set the bar and what the purpose of the crowdfunding was. I did crowdfunding for the first issue of Rammer simply because there wasn't originally, the publisher, Marcosi, wasn't going to do a print version of it until it's collected. So I was going to do the crowdfunding just to get print. And then I found out towards the end of the crowdfunding that they were going to do print. But I ended up building a small audience for it. I turned a small profit on the crowdfunding. I ended up plugging myself into a community that I didn't know existed before, and found myself here with you fellows, which is a very comfortable place for me to be. Originally, I was stumbling around and getting blindsided by people who were interested in having me on so they could attack me. I was not really ready for that, but. I made a lot of good friends, found a lot of good places to be, and so doing the crowdfunding was originally the purpose for it was something very different from the result, and I'm glad I did it. I probably will not do it again, but I'll be promoting things through the same channels that I was promoting the crowdfunding. But crowdfunding, people have to understand how much work it is. Yeah. And I knew it was going to be a lot of work going in, but it was about 10 times more than I could possibly have imagined. Same thing you mentioned before, Rush, you mentioned YouTube, having a YouTube channel. I was about to pull the trigger on one and decided, you know what? I don't have the time. I'm not gonna do it. I'll put myself on other people's YouTubes and podcasts and streams, but I'm not going to do my own because I simply don't have the time.
Yeah, it's what it comes down to. It comes down to time. Crowdfunding it sucks up so much of your time. I would consider my first crowdfunder a success. I made a moderate profit out of it. So I think the first thing you've got to look at with whether it's successful or not is, did you lose money?
Yeah.
Okay. If you haven't lost money, it's a success.
Yeah.
But even if you lost money, if you ended up getting yourself in front of a lot of people that didn't know who you were before, right, and you've now got their email addresses, you know who they are, and they're on your list and all, it could have been what we used to call a lost leader.
Yeah.
So and there's nothing wrong with that. It depends on what your business plan is. You really have to have a business plan, a business model, and it's never going to go the way you planned. But you have to have a map, and you have to have a plan. You're going to end up changing it literally every day, if not every hour. But you do have to have a concept of the direction that you're going in.
That's what I didn't do for my first few crowdfunders, which failed. The only success, or the only one that worked, is the Kirby book. I didn't plan anything. I just went on it and then told everybody. I didn't do the build up and all that kind of thing, which is really important. But as we're saying, it takes such a long time because you've got to do the build up, the pre-launch, as they say, which is, as George Carlin would say, is that launching before you launch. And then you've got to do the campaign and keep on that, and then you've got to do the fulfillment, which is a real ball ache, as I told you about when I took all those parcels to the post office. The first time I went, they thought it was funny, but the next day when I turned up, they were not happy at all because it took me an hour to do it, or the guy to do it. I just stood there and paid, waited for him to.
It is a huge amount. It is a huge amount of effort and a lot of time. I think that's the thing is you don't mind the effort. You won't mind being up at 3 o'clock in the morning and speaking to people on the other side of the world. That's all fine. That's great. But at the same time you're doing that, you're trying to create as well.
Yeah.
You're trying to work, and it's the time that it takes away from the drawing board.
I told you before when I was doing Crikey, I had 350 subscribers. So that meant that every month I was going to my local post office with 350 parcels.
Right.
Yeah,
and then I just dumped them there. I just said, there you go. The new was that I'll see you tomorrow and I'll pay you. So that, and they were the girls discussed, they told me they discussed actually having me purchase the stamps to stick on and taking them away and bringing them back just finished, ready to rock and roll, I said, well, no, that's your job, I'm keeping you in work.
You're the post office, not me. I don't do post office. I don't get people to put a stamp on and give me stuff and I'll run down the road with it. No.
I did the build up to the campaign because I knew you had to, and a couple of months, and I realized that I could have done 5 times as much buildup, and I would have benefited from it. But who has the time? You have to at some point decide. Okay, there's only 24 hours in a day. How am I going to divide it up? What is the best use of my time? And a general concept for being successful, I think, in any endeavor, is you need to stop and think all day long. What is the most important thing for me to do next? And by next, I mean now. Right now. What's the most important thing for me to be doing right now, to be doing next, keeping in mind whatever the ultimate goal is? And it's going to change. You got to be flexible. You thought, okay, this should be the next thing I need to be doing. But 10 minutes later, you might think, okay, that probably was not it. So I need to do something else. And it's difficult to keep flexible and moving, to have a plan, but to also be flexible. There's a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. That's a pretty fancy title, but it's a
I haven't heard that title in a long time.
It's a great book. Yeah. And one of the things, the analogies he gives is that your life is like a guided missile. A guided missile that's flying through the air is changing direction every second. Yeah. It's constantly changing, course correcting to keep on track, and that's what planning your business model has got to be like. You got to have a plan, but be flexible enough to be making constant adjustments. Some of them are going to be big, some of them are going to be small, but to be making them all the time, and not to get locked into something that you thought was going to work and it's not quite working, but you're afraid or reluctant to suck it up and say, I need to make a change.
Mm. Here you go. I just got this in my email, which is quite good. According to my activity, online, they thought I might be interested in my own book. So I thought it was great.
There you go. Who knew?
Hello, Arleach.
Hello, Arleach. Based on your most recent activity, we thought you might be interested in this.
I think I've gotten that email as well. Yeah, not for your book, for mine.
No, yeah, for your book. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Yeah, I actually went and ordered it on that, based on that.
Your book? I might order one of my own, actually. Just see how it works. Yeah.
And with that, we want to thank everybody for watching an episode of Comics by Night for the 4th of November, 2022. Charles, tell folks how they can find you.
Well, you can go onto Amazon, and you can find this, and actually you can also find everything else I've written. It's on Amazon as well. I'm on Facebook as Charles Santino. I am on Twitter occasionally, and Instagram occasionally as well. And please go check out Rammer. He is a master thief in a future police state, talking about IPs. There's 7 words, the shortest elevator pitch in entertainment.
Great. Russ, tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me at russleach.com. You can find me on all the usual places, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all, what have you, and a few others, and on YouTube as Comic Book Black Belt. But all those links you can find at russleach.com. You can find out Only Death Can Save Us is on pre-order currently over at Amazon, or you can get book 2 and the original version of book 1, which there is a limited number of. You can go and get those over at Indiegogo, and they'll be out for, I think, March next year is the date we're aiming for. You can also read Batman now in Brazil, Italy, and Spain and France, as well as the UK. So you can find him there with our Panini DC magazine for kids, although they're for kids of all ages. So you will enjoy the special bat shooter on the front of the magazine. And obviously all the other bat shooter, yes, and all the other stuff.
Didn't Sylvester Stallone have one of those?
Yeah, I think he had a bat shooter. Quick, get the dread shooter out! I am the law. So you can find me there, but you can find out all about that at russleach.com.
Great. Glenn, tell folks how they can find you.
Yeah, like everybody else, I'm on Facebook and all those kind of things. But if you want to find my work, my books, there's 10 of them, I think. You can go to Amazon for those. But if you want this one, get in touch with me. It's only from me. And get that as well. That's on Amazon.
Sweet. And issue 11 of Comics Unlimited should be up there soon?
It should be. I was going to make an announcement later. It should be in a couple of weeks.
Jump the gun then. Okay.
Yeah. It's
nice to know I wasn't. I must not have been the really late one.
You're not the last one, no.
Yeah, I was just late. I was one really late.
Everybody's late. They think I just turn it around in 2 hours, which I do, but don't tell anybody.
It just comes together.
Yeah. Well, you saw the other night, Randy, when you sent me that script. I sent you them pages straight back.
Yeah. Yeah, I sent those over to Jason too. He was stunned at how fast you had put that together.
Yeah, that's what I do. Part of what I do.
And hey, everybody, I've been your host, Randy Zimmerman. You can always reach me at thezimcast@gmail.com. Right there, you can look for me on Facebook and Twitter if you have to. There's a link tree out there for Arrow Comics 4.0. There's actually a YouTube channel for Arrow Comics 4.0. I was producing videos for a little while, but it's so much easier and so much fun to do podcasts like this, where you just sit here and talk and wander way off topic and do all sorts of crazy conversations with friends. You know, the bugs really brought a lot of people together from all over the world who have like interests like this, and that's I just really enjoy doing this. That's why I do it. You can find me next time Sunday morning for the Sunday Funnies at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please don't forget to set your clocks back an hour. We'll be there at 9 a.m. after the adjusted time. Sunday Funnies Eastern. That's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we talk about the books that we love. And this Sunday, we're going to talk about the stories, the comic stories that we love, the ones that really have stayed with us over the years, the particular stories with particular characters that we feel are just the prime example of great comics. And there's a lot of them out there. And we're probably going to wander off topic there too, but it'll probably be over to other stories and other characters, other artists, other companies, other icons. Next week here on Comics by Night on Friday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time will probably be a pre-recorded episode, because I will be at the Grand Rapids Comic Con from the let me pull that up there, right there. There we go. They with a bunch of other indie comics creators over at the Grand Rapids Comic Con, November 11th through the 13th at the DeVos Place in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And if you're from Grand Rapids, you know where the DeVos Place is. It's big. So it's going to be a great show. This will be my 4th or 5th year of doing that. It's probably more than that. It's always a great show and a lot of fun. Other than that, you can catch me on the last issue 10 and the upcoming issue 11 of Comics Unlimited. I have a book on Amazon called War of the Worlds Infestation that Caliber print on demand for me over there. Then there's Arrow Comics 4.0. And if you haven't seen the Rift Riders campaign over on Indiegogo, we'll probably run a little bump for that as we go out today. So,
you giving Spielberg royalties on that? War of the
no,
Worlds?
but don't get me started. That's a whole nother story. I was this close to have that thing as once as a movie and once as a TV miniseries, and both times it was stopped. Well, one time it was stopped because of 9/11, but the other time it was stopped because of Spielberg and that silly cruise. And what a mess of a movie that was. So I wish they'd have done my book, not just because I'd have gotten a nice royalty chunk off of it, but because the story was so much better than the one that was a mess. That movie was horrible.
Get down.
Anyway,
Get down,
don't get me
Tom.
started, like
Get
I
down.
said. But anyway, yeah, I'm still really proud of that story. But Arrow Comics 4.0, I'm editor-in-chief of Arrow Comics. We have a lot of great stuff coming out. Rift Riders, if you go over to the Rift Riders Indiegogo campaign, there is an Arrow tier there where we are offering 8 phenomenal books. One of them is Only Taste of Only Death Can Save Us by Russ Leach.
Yum, yum.
One of them, the Revolt book, has got a story by Glenn, as well as a story by myself in there. 3 of them, HeroBot Zero, Paragon, and Calico, are my own properties that I've written. HeroBot Zero, I did the majority of the artwork on, and Paragon and Calico are drawn by other artists. Calico is drawn by C. Michael Lanning, who was in the chat earlier. And then Paragon is done by H.R. Harris, or J.R. Harris, excuse me.
Got some talent allied to this show, don't we?
There's some fun, yeah. Well, we do what we do because we love it, you know. And that's also the part of the fun. Wednesday nights, I also have a program here on the Indie Comics Network, and make sure you go over there and subscribe if you haven't already over on YouTube or indiecomicsnetwork.com. Everything is archived over there, even the bits that YouTube's a little shaky about. So there's a lot of great programming on this channel. Not all of it's by us, but
we do the best one.
But we do the best one, yeah. But not all of it's going to be to your taste, but the majority of it will be, or at least be somewhat entertaining. And you can go over there and check those out. That's the Indie Comics Network over on YouTube, and indiecomics.com, or Indie Comics Network, I should say, .com, for more shows like this. And
there are worse ways to spend your time. That's our motto.
Yeah.
All the comics by nights, all the great Sunday funnies, and all the ZimmCasts are over there. And then Wednesday night at 10 p.m., I do the ZimmCast, where we talk about this comic industry with a little bit more of an opinion to it.
What the fuck is the matter with people in this business?
But anyway. That's the ZimmCast at 10 p.m. That's an opinion. That's a ZimmCast 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on the Indie Comics Network. Go over there and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Even if you don't listen to it on YouTube, go over there and subscribe, because we're trying to grow our subscribers organically, which means everybody there is an actual living person and not a Russian bot or a fake account or whatever. So thank you very much for listening, everybody. This has been Comics by Night, early in the morning now for us, or mid-morning for Glenn and Russ. It's a little past avocado time, right?
Now it is actually now time for the avocado.
Yeah,
now
11's is.
11's is. Yeah.
Coffee.
Off for a tea cake.
I'm off to the gym. So, and then later I've got I'm having brunch with Susan Van Camp, which I'm really looking forward to. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we jaw just like this, only it's, across the table with coffee. So
more biscuits.
Fun. Maybe. Yeah. Probably a couple of eggs and hash browns. Actually, who knows? Take care, everybody. There's a few bumps as we go out, so hang around for those. Some important information and still a lot of great fun. So we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Try to leave this industry in better shape than what you found it, please. And if you get a chance, go visit your local retailer and check through those boxes that might have a little bit of dust on them, and look for that gold, because there's a lot of great sequential art out there just waiting to be discovered out there. So take care, everybody. Here we go.
Have a question or comment for us to address on the show? Have a topic you want us to talk about? Email us at indiecomicsnetwork@gmail.com. Want your comics to arrive in pristine condition? Head over to GeminiComicSupply.com and save 10% on your next Gemini mailer order or anything in the Gemini Comics Supply store. Use coupon code RAGIN10. That's RAGIN 10.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
When your timeline reaches its Armageddon, what's a kid to do?
I'm not a...
Snag the keys to your mom's experimental ship, of course.
That's not quite how it happened.
Drift aimlessly in the rift between dimensions, trying to figure out how to operate it.
Now hold on a sec.
Pick up a few hitchhikers.
Hi! Hello.
And maybe solve a disturbing mystery that could lead to the destruction of reality itself.
You know, if there's time... There's always time.
I'm not so sure about that.
Get in on the adventure with the Rift Riders on Indiegogo.
How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
And, who's your favorite Marvel Comics hero? Mine is Superman. Remember the motto? With great power comes great responsibility.
Look, everybody's entitled to be an idiot.